UFC Fight Night, Derrick Lewis versus Serghei Spivac. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, as usual. Fight by fight breakdown, fight by fight analysis from that betting perspective. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you visit our YouTube channel at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And of course, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC Fight Night event, we have 12 fights. Keep in mind, it is a later start time than usual, 10 p.m. Eastern start time, so be wary of that. I don't think the main card starts until 1 a.m. Eastern time. But nonetheless, 7 of those 12 fights are on the prelim. 5 of them are on the main card. So we are going to get started, of course, with fight number 1 of our prelims, where we are looking at Tatsuro Taira versus Jesus Aguilar. And for Taira, 2-0 in the UFC. He had a win against CJ Vergara back in October. Still just 23 years old, so expect him to improve every fight. But from what we already see from him, very comfortable on the feet, a lot of fakes and feints in his attack. He's pretty patient, fights from distance, but he's very light on his feet, a lot of in and out movement as well. Very sharp striking. So the sharp calf kicks, he picks his shots well. He's more on the methodical, technical side of things as a striker, and he has that ground IQ as well. 2 UFC fights, as I mentioned, 2-0. He's landed 4 takedowns in those fights. Effective level changes, effective takedown entries, effective top control. His record 12-0, 6 of them are via submission, including his last fight. Really just overall a good prospect to watch out for, and the biggest favorite on this card going up against Jesus Aguilar, who is making his UFC debut. He fought on Dana White Contender Series back in August. Bit flat-footed on the feet, but expect him to swing big. He's mostly hands in terms of his striking. He's looking for the power. He's looking for those explosive moments. Expect level changes and takedown attempts from him as well. We see his record there, 8-1. 6 of those 8 wins are via submission. All of those were guillotines or rear naked chokes. So that tells you that he's able to get the fight to the ground, pull for that guillotine or potentially take the back and look for that rear naked. Like I said, Tatsuro Taira, huge favorite here, so I won't spend too much time. He should be better everywhere, Tatsuro Taira. On top of that, I don't think Jesus Aguilar has good takedown defense at all, and he leaves himself open to submissions to be attempted on him pretty often. I think Aguilar has that puncher's chance if he goes for it, but outside of the puncher's chance, I think Tatsuro Taira should cruise to victory pretty easily here. I can see Taira controlling distance on the feet. I can see him being the better striker. I can see him landing takedowns, and again, possibly a submission to end the fight as well. So I got my eyes on that. But nonetheless, my winner for this fight, pretty comfortably, Tatsuro Taira.
Okay, this is a good fight to start the card with. The UFC really likes this guy, Tatsuro Taira. They're definitely bringing him up the right way. This is definitely a winnable fight. He's the bigger guy, the more skilled guy. And this guy looks like he has a high ceiling as far as where he's going to go in his career with this mixed martial arts. So when I look at Aguilar, though, I do see some areas that he's better than Taira, such as I think he's a bit more tough. Just being older, I think he could take a better shot. I think he has more toughness. But aside from that, I think Taira is better everywhere as well. But I will give Aguilar, he does have a couple wins with guillotine. So that might be something to look out for as far as a path for him to get a win here, because it seems that he has a fight-ending guillotine that has worked for him numerous times. But I think Taira is going to be ready. I think Tatsuro is going to be ready for this one. I think he's going to take him down. On the feet, I think he's a much better striker, plus with the reach advantage as well. So I like Tatsuro in this spot. As far as the odds are, I'm definitely not interested in this fight. Even on a parlay, I don't think it's worth it. But I do think Tatsuro gets it done.
Fight number 2 of our prelims, we have Jeong Yeong Park taking on Denis Tiuliulin. Park is on a 2-fight winning streak. He beat Joseph Holmes back in October. He's primarily a boxer. In fact, he's introduced as a boxer, and he's a pretty patient striker overall. He has a good jab. He has good timing as a counterpuncher as well. He's not really going to initiate the offense too often, but he has that striking IQ. He has good distance control, and he does press forward effectively when he needs to. When he is pressing forward, I should say, it gives him the opportunity to land those takedowns. We look at his takedown numbers there, very respectable, 2.25 per fight, 54% accuracy, I should say. Also a respectable 70% takedown defense. That tells us that he can still be taken down though, but he can scramble his way back up if he is taken down. Overall, what I really like from Jeong Yeong Park is his consistent pace, his good cardio, doesn't really slow down. He's pretty consistent from that first minute all the way up to minute number 15. He's going up against Denis Tiuliulin, who beat Jamie Pickett back in September. Tiuliulin is a pretty good striker. Again, he's introduced as a striker as well. He has a good jab. He's going to look for that overhand right. He presses forward as well. He forces that action a bit sometimes, and has really good power. Very explosive. 9 of his 11 wins are via KO, TKO, including his last fight. Looks a bit basic on the feet, I'll say. Isn't really a high activity or high pace striker. He is Russian, so although we don't really see any wrestling out of him, his takedown numbers support that thought there. He hasn't shown it, but again, he has shown an ability to sort of fight those takedowns. But you always got to keep in mind when you're going up against a Russian, because they could show you a little bit more than they've shown you at any given point. This is a close fight. I know Jeong Yeong Park is a bit of a sizable favorite, minus 200, but I think this fight is a little bit closer than the odds are indicating. I think both guys are pretty well matched against each other. Both strikers, I think a lot of this fight will be on the feet, whereas Jeong Yeong Park is a good counterpuncher. I think that Denis Tiuliulin is the bigger threat on the feet. I say that because Tiuliulin is going to be physically bigger here. He has more power on the feet. And Tiuliulin has had some good moments in each of his fights with his striking, even being a big underdog in some of those fights. He's landed big shots. He's backed his opponents up. And I can see Park potentially having some problems handling that pressure and that power that Tiuliulin can offer up. The key to this fight is whether Tiuliulin can defend that takedown or not. 75% takedown defense on paper in the UFC, small sample size because he hasn't had too many fights. But stylistically, what I see from Tiuliulin, he's a pretty good sprawl and brawl type of fighter. And even if he is taken down, he can work his way back up. What I'm getting at here is I like the underdog. I like Denis Tiuliulin here. I think there's good value on him in a fight that I believe is 50-50. Park has some striking advantages, but I think Tiuliulin can be the bigger threat with the striking, can have the bigger moments with the striking. I think Park's style will allow Tiuliulin to set things up. And I think that striking could be a problem. That power could be a problem. So 50-50 fight if nothing else. And with the size of underdog that Tiuliulin is, I might have to bite at that. I'm looking at Denis Tiuliulin to win this fight.
Yeah, I'm actually going with Jeong Yeong Park here, man. I think he has a really educated jab. I think he's able to get the takedowns in this fight, get that single leg. I just think he's the more well-rounded guy. Denis is definitely can definitely finish him, can definitely knock him out, can definitely hurt him, as we've seen in the Rodriguez fight. He did get hurt in that fight. But I just think that Jeong Yeong Park is going to kind of move around the ring, use that jab. And I think he's going to get this to the mat. And as the fight goes on, his cardio is really good. I'm not sure Denis can go 3 rounds as at that pace. Jeong Yeong Park, I can see him pushing up pace in this fight. 31 years old as well, so he's definitely in his prime. I think this is a fight that he could win. So I'm going to go with Jeong Yeong Park beating Denis Tiuliulin.
Fight number 3, Ji Yeon Kim versus Mandy Böhm. For Ji Yeon Kim, she's on a 4-fight losing streak. She had a split decision loss to Jocelyn Edwards back in July. She's a striker. She's introduced as having a boxing and jiu-jitsu background. She's pretty composed on the feet. She's pretty light on the feet. She has pretty good in and out movement. The striking IQ is pretty decent as well in terms of her choice of punches. I think she's more of a technician than a brawler, but definitely willing to engage. She has a chin. She has that toughness factor to her as well. And in terms of the striking, where she's pretty much going to keep the fight, it's more boxing than anything else. So don't expect a lot of kicks out of her. Going up against Mandy Böhm, 0-2 in the UFC. She lost to Victoria Leonardo back in July. She has a decent jab. She has decent kicks, good diversity to her striking. She's pretty light on her feet, has solid movement as well. She's a point fighting type of style. She's not the most active striker, has that K1 experience. Again, just speaking further to that ability on the feet. Pretty knowledgeable on the ground as well, at least defensively. I've seen her be able to get up if she's taken down. She's shown me some defensive grappling as well. I'm not going to depend on either of these fighters' ground game offensively, though. So I will say that I expect most of this fight to occur on the feet. And I will say also, watch out for this fight, whichever direction you want to go, because this is a relatively low-level women's flyweight fight, women's fight in general. To that point, I feel like Mandy Böhm is at the lower level than Ji Yeon Kim. I think Kim has better striking, better hands, better movement. I think Kim is also the more active striker, which will work to her advantage. I don't think Mandy Böhm is going to have an answer to that, right? She may land a takedown or two, but I don't anticipate her doing much beyond that to put rounds in her favor. So my pick will be Ji Yeon Kim pretty comfortably in terms of analyzing this fight, but with caution because it is a low-level fight. So I'm not looking to parlay her on anything, but I can pretty comfortably pick Ji Yeon Kim to win this fight.
Yeah, Jeong Kim, Mandy Böhm. Jeong Kim is on a 4-fight losing streak, but I think she did win that Priscilla Cachoeira fight. Mandy Böhm's coming into this fight on a 2-fight losing streak. The difference is, I think Jeong Kim is putting up a better fight in these fights than Mandy Böhm is, and Jeong Kim is fighting tougher opponents as well. Yeah, so I think this is a fight that Jeong Kim's gonna get done. One thing about Mandy Böhm, I noticed watching the footage here is that she doesn't feel that comfortable in there. She looked way better pre-UFC, albeit against easier competition. But maybe the bright lights get to her. Maybe she doesn't perform. I remember growing up, there was a guy in my neighborhood, one of the best basketball players in my opinion. And then we went to high school basketball games. He just didn't shine. He couldn't translate it. He was nervous. Or it just wasn't there, right? And I think she has something similar, where in the training room she puts in great rounds, but in front of the big crowd, the big UFC lights, she looks like she's a bit hesitant. So I like Jeong Kim in this spot, more active, more accurate striker. I think she gets it done over 3 rounds.
Let's look at fight number 4. Our first finale for Road to the UFC in the flyweight division. We have Seung Choi versus Hyun Sung Park. For Hyun Sung Park, he's undefeated 7-0. He last competed in October, of course, in his Road to the UFC fight. Pretty comfortable on the feet. He has that active lead hand, always assessing distance, pretty consistent forward pressure as well. A lot of fakes and feints in his style. The hands are decent, decent combinations. Hands aren't really active enough, in my opinion. I feel like he's pretty selective about his shots, but he has a good regular calf kick, a good stiff jab, a good power to go along with it. And he's shown me a decent ground game as well, getting guys to the ground and finishing guys on the ground as well. Going up against Seung Choi, who is on a 5-fight winning streak in his own right. He's light on his feet, a lot of in and out movement, a lot of fakes and feints, level changes, things like that. His jab hand will stay active, looking to set up those combinations, good regular calf kick as well. And he's also going to shoot for and land takedowns. Really looks like both of these guys are pretty well matched up in this fight. I think both of these guys are capable strikers. I think both have good jabs. I think both have good calf kicks. The difference here is that I think that Hyun Sung Park is the bigger power threat. I feel like he's a bit more dangerous on the feet as a result of that. I can see a situation where Hyun Sung Park is committing to that forward pressure more consistently as that power threat, whereas Seung Choi will be retreating a bit, kind of fighting from the outside with that in and out movement. And I think that's all the difference that I need to see. I mean, both of these guys, again, they've shown me good takedown defense. So I think a lot of this fight is going to occur on the feet as a result of that. And again, like I said, I think that Hyun Sung Park is the bigger striking threat, may even get the finish. So I'm looking at Hyun Sung Park here. I mean, each of these road to the UFC final fights are going to have some caution because we don't know what level they're at. We haven't seen them compared to UFC talent, and even going up against each other, we still don't have the answer to that. But Park is my pick from what I've seen. He should be the bigger power threat. Minus 200 should feel comfortable. But again, I raise caution to all four of these final fights. But Hyun Sung Park, again, is my pick.
Yeah, first fight of this, what do they call it? The UFC title or something? I don't know what it's called, but it's a tough one, man. This is a tough one because before these guys fought on the UFC road to whatever it's called, they fought nobody prior to that. They were fighting guys with like 500 records or fighters that have had one or two fights. And I'm talking about both of these fighters before they did this UFC thing. They fought absolutely nothing. But I'll be honest, just the eye test, they look pretty good, which I'm surprised with the experience they have. That these guys are pretty good across the four fighters that are the four fights are going to be happening with these guys. But when I look at these guys, Hyun Sung Park, his grappling stands out. His jiu-jitsu, his fight-ending ability. He could finish the fights submission. He's looking to do that. I think he's a grappler first, but he can strike. He's definitely rounding out his game. He has finishes with strikes as well, and he's looked better on. He's looked better in the UFC in these fights than Sung Choi. Sung Choi is well rounded though. He's pretty much decent everywhere. So I'm not sure if Park's gonna be able to get it to the mat, but I think he can hold his own on the feet. And I think because he finishes fights more than Choi, there's a good chance, or he has a better chance, obviously, of finishing this fight out of the two fighters. So I'm gonna go with Park. I'm gonna go with Park here to get this one done. But again, he has to get this to the mat. He doesn't have world-class wrestling, and Hyun Sung Park has wrestling as well, but and he has good takedown defense. So I'm not sure if it's going to get there. If he does get it there, he's going to make it look easy. He's going to look like a big favorite in those spots. But if this stays on the feet, I can see this going back and forth. Anyone can win that. But I got to go with Choi just because he finishes more fights. So I think if anyone gets finished, I'm going to go with Park. But I think if anyone gets finished, that's going to be Choi.
All right. So in agreement there with Hyun Sung Park, let's move on to fight number 5 of our prelims. The second of these road to the UFC final fights. This one in the bantamweight division. We have Toshiomi Kazama versus Rinya Nakamura. For Kazama, he won his last fight. That was all the way back in June. Aggressive forward pressure, aggressive forward movement. Doesn't really set things up, but he has really good explosiveness, good power as well. Likes to keep the distance close. He's going to look for clinch situations, and he can land takedowns. Has a pretty knowledgeable ground game as well from what I was seeing. Good top control, good jiu-jitsu. There are some holes to his game, though. His cardio could definitely be better. He also spams those takedown attempts sometimes and makes it kind of easy to defend it. He's going up against the undefeated Rinya Nakamura, who's a southpaw on the feet, very explosive, has good power, good pressure, a lot of fakes and feints, a lot of head movement, and has some solid hands to go along with it. Again, he has that good power. He lands hard combinations with that forward pressure, and he also has the ground game. He has the solid wrestling. He has good takedowns, good ground IQ as well. Like I said, with any of these title fights, I'm going to be a little bit careful as, I mean, we don't know what level they're at. Either fighter can technically win it. This is technically a low-level fight, despite how good these guys have looked, as Zan mentioned, doing the eye test. I can see Nakamura as the big favorite, though. I can understand why. But Kazama looks like he can be dangerous as well. I think that either fighter looks like they can land takedowns on one another. But like I said, I can see why Nakamura is the big favorite here. His striking looks significantly better. It looks like his power can be a huge threat in this fight. If he can keep it standing, he may get that knockout finish. And again, I've seen a ground game from both. So I can't really say that any one fighter is significantly better on the ground. So I have to think that Nakamura is the much smarter pick here. Again, as the significantly better striker in a fight that potentially stays on the feet, that could potentially end in a finish. Rinya Nakamura, I believe, will stay undefeated.
Yeah, I think he had some good points in this fight, but I think Rinya Nakamura is a lock here, man. I think he was brought onto this show to win. I think he was brought on to win, man. Like you beat a guy that was like 23-6, 23, whatever it was, a vet, and this guy's new to the game. And when you look at the wrestling, his pedigree, this guy is under 23, 2017 gold medalist at the World Championships. This guy is like a really, really good wrestler. So he's going to be the better wrestler in this spot. I think he's going to be the one getting the takedowns. Not only is he better, this guy is huge, man. This guy is much bigger than much bigger than the next guy. Like Rinya Nakamura is gonna have the size difference against whatever that guy's name is. I'm sorry, Kazama. So I like Nakamura here, man. I think he's gonna do what he wants. I think he's gonna finish this fight. I think he's too big. His wrestling's gonna be too strong, and he has power, and he has a good knee that he holds the clinch, throws that knee. I think he's gonna win this fight pretty easily.
All right, fight number 6, third of these Road to the UFC final fights. This one in the featherweight division. We have Jeong Yeong Lee taking on Zha Yi. For Zha Yi, 3-fight winning streak. He won his last fight by split decision. I thought he may have lost that fight for what it's worth. A lot of in and out movement, not really doing too much with the striking by way of setting things up. He can be really explosive. He can, really start to engage in those combinations, but otherwise he's going to have that sort of explosive one shot at a time type of offense. And outside of that, again, the striking just isn't too active. Of course, small sample size, but we see those significant strikes landed per minute supporting that. And he's going to look to use his ground game often. He can land the takedowns. He's landed a total of 9 takedowns in his 2 Road to the UFC fights. Has that scrambling ability, has that grappling ability to go along with it. Going up against Jeong Yeong Lee, who's on a 6-fight winning streak, usually a very fast starter, has that good forward pressure, has that good jab, very explosive. Again, lots of power with a lot of these fighters here. Look for some switch stance out of him as well. Fights at that high pace, like I mentioned. He has a lot of early finishes on his resume. Sharp calf kick, sharp jab, good combinations as well. Didn't really see much of a ground game, but looks like he knows what he's doing on the ground with the small footage that I saw with respect to that. He also has a few submissions to his name. Stylistically, I can see a lot of this fight occurring on the feet, though, as I anticipate Zha going for takedowns at some point. But I say that I think most of it stays on the feet because Jeong Yeong Lee has a significant striking advantage. I can see the explosiveness being a problem, not really allowing Zha to bring the fight to the ground. I can see a quick start being a problem for Zha as well, especially considering that they're both fast starters. And I feel more comfortable with Jeong Yeong Lee's striking. I think it's more dangerous. And even if it's one of those fights where the first 30 seconds is a brawl, I'm going to trust Jeong Yeong Lee's shots to be the shots that land in that situation. We could be looking at an early stoppage here in either direction. So there is some caution either way you go. Otherwise, I anticipate a successful sprawl and brawl type of style from Jeong Yeong Lee. And I think Jeong Yeong Lee is going to get it done. So Jeong Yeong Lee is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is one of the harder fights, man. For me, Zha Yi versus Jeong Yeong Lee, this is a tough fight because Jeong Yeong Lee has shown that he got taken down pretty easy in one of those fights I've seen. Yes, he did get the submission right after, but Zha Yi can get these takedowns. He can take this to the mat. He's going to be the better wrestler in this fight, and he has a lot of experience. He has many fights. Striking, I give a big advantage to Jeong Yeong Lee, the power that he has. The Korean Tiger, I think this guy is going to be the much better striker if this stays on the feet. But I just think that Zha Yi can use his experience and he could make this a wrestling match, a grappling match. If he avoids a submission, he could win this fight just being on top. One thing I like about Jeong Yeong Lee though is that power, the submission game that he has. He's looked better than Zha Yi in the previous in the fights on the road to the UFC. He has a knockout in 10 seconds, an armbar in 36 seconds, and another knockout in 42 seconds. So he has 3 finishes in 1 minute. This guy is going in there, taking off heads, right? And the one loss he has on his record was against back in 2017 against So Young Kim. A year later, he knocked him out in 3 minutes. So this guy is definitely not scared of a challenge. He's not running from a defeat. He wants to make it right, which he did. This is gonna be a tough fight again. I think this will be a grappler versus striker type of fight, wrestler versus striker. Because Young Lee can grapple. He has really good submissions. How quick he got that armbar. But I'm gonna go with Jeong Yeong Lee, man. I just think at some point in the fight, he's gonna get an opening, and this guy's finishing people. So I like that about his game, that he's getting a lot of finishes. So I think he's gonna add another finish to his collection here at some point, probably around the second round. Jeong Yeong Lee knockout.
7th fight, final fight of the prelim, also the final fight in terms of these road to the UFC finales. This one being in the lightweight division, we have Jeka Saragih versus Anshul Jubli. For Anshul Jubli, I should say, split decision win in his last fight. He stays undefeated with that 6-0, decent on the feet, good height for the division. The movement's okay. The jab hand stays pretty active. Decent long jab, decent long right hand, has decent 2-punch combinations as well. Look for him to try to be that fighter coming forward. He has that consistent pace and consistent cardio about him as well. As for the ground, bit of a ground game offensively. I have seen him with decent top control. I have seen him try to set up submissions as well. He's going up against Jeka Saragih, who's on a 5-fight winning streak, though. Look for Saragih to fight from distance. I don't think his technique is the cleanest, but he has good combinations, not afraid to engage, has good striking speed, usually able to land more than his opponents when they do engage. Has really good power too. A lot of early finishes to his name. In terms of Jeka Saragih's ground game, he has shown me good top control. He has shown me good positioning and good takedowns as well. Like I said, I mean, sample size is going to be somewhat limited with these fighters. In the road to the UFC fight, Anshul Jubli didn't really show me the best takedown defense. I find that concerning. He gave up 4 takedowns in that fight, and I can see Jeka Saragih as a result taking advantage of that. I think both of these guys are very much strikers, though, so I expect most of this fight to occur on the feet. I like Saragih overall for this fight. I feel like overall he's the better talent. I wasn't really too impressed with Anshul Jubli overall. I wasn't too impressed with his striking. I think Saragih will be able to outpace Jubli on the feet. I think Saragih has the power advantage as well. And I think that Saragih is the more likely of the two to land takedowns and to actually implement some kind of ground game. So I'm looking at Jeka Saragih to get it done. Again, I wasn't too impressed with Anshul Jubli.
Yeah, this is another tough one, man, for me when I was going back and with this fight. That's why the odds are like that. Going back and forth on this fight, though. Anshul Jubli, he's definitely improving his striking. Decent striking. I think he has pretty technical striking. Defensively, not the best, and that could be a problem in this fight. I've seen some takedowns before, like in previous fights, but in this fight, I think most of it's going to be on the feet. And I do think Jubli is probably technically a more technical striker, but I think that Sarag, that power that he has, the explosiveness that he has, it will be a problem in this fight. And I think once he lands one of those heavy bombs, I think that's going to change the fight. And I don't think Jubli's going to recover. So I like Saragih in this spot here. I think he's gonna land, man. I think he's gonna eventually connect. The explosiveness that he has is more of an athlete, and I think that's gonna be a factor in this fight against Jubli. So I'm gonna go Saragih here to catch him. to knock him out.
All right, let's finish off with the prelims. Let's move on to fight number one of our main card, Yusaku Kinoshita versus Adam Fugitt. For Kinoshita, making his UFC debut after competing on Dana White Contender Series back in August, just 22 years old, southpaw. He has some effective switch dancing as well, good movement, good pressure. Look for good kicks out of him. A lot of kicks as part of his offense. That jab hand stays active as well. He's constantly assessing his space, throwing fake jabs, level changes, different things like that. He can be very explosive as well, like we saw in Dana White Contender Series. He can definitely load up on his punches and his combinations. So really watch out for that power threat. Going up against Adam Fugitt, who lost to Michael Morales in his July debut. He's a southpaw as well. Solid kicks. He'll use anything from high kicks to push kicks to fake kicks to close distance, really comes from having that traditional Muay Thai stance on the feet. A lot of fakes and feints in his attack. He is going to try to commit to that consistent forward pressure as well. I think his hands lack some technique, but he does put some good sting behind his punches. Half of his 8 wins are via KO, TKO, so he has that in him. Decent at closing distance as well. And in his debut, he showed that he can land a takedown, though I wouldn't say to really rely on that part of his game. Fugitt didn't look too bad against, in his debut against a really big favorite in Michael Morales. So don't expect him to not show up here. That said, I think stylistically, this matchup is going to favor Yusaku Kinoshita. I believe that Kinoshita's striking is more well-rounded, more well-versed. I also believe that he can be the aggressor, despite both guys liking to press forward. Kinoshita's young, making his debut, so that alone is going to say that there is value on the dog in Adam Fugitt. And I believe that both guys can have their moments to that point. But like I said, I think Kinoshita will be able to have bigger moments. I think his hands specifically are better than Fugitt's, while being able to match those kicks. And I think that eventually, I think that advantage will definitely wear on Fugitt as this fight goes on, potentially leading to a late stoppage type of situation. Look for Fugitt to look good early in the fight, but look for Kinoshita to take over as this fight progresses. Kinoshita is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I'm going Kinoshita, man. This guy has that mean streak. He's like a polished Chris Lieben style, heavy power. And Fugitt doesn't really is not the best defensively. I don't think he's gonna be able to take that many shots from Kinoshita. I see Kinoshita getting the finish in this spot, so I like Kinoshita here to get the win.
All right, fight number 2 of our main card, we have Doo-Ho Choi versus Kyle Nelson. Doo-Ho Choi, of course, returns after a 3+ year layoff, 3-fight losing streak at the time, but still just 31 years old even after the layoff. That could mean a new style or additions to his style, but of course, let's base the analysis off of who he has been. Controlled striking, controlled forward pace and pressure. He has that good jab, good calf kick, good jab, good fakes and feints as well. The boxing was always really solid. His hands stay tight, good combinations, good power, big right hand, and he sets it up well. More than half of his wins are via KO, TKO, so that is a weapon that he relies on. Good striking IQ to go along with it. He's never too out of control. You do wonder how his chin will hold up, though. Again, I talk about that 3-fight losing streak. He's wobbled a few times during those 3 losses. Yes, 3 years ago, but never really know if that chin has ever returned. Kyle Nelson, on the other hand, 2-fight losing streak. He had that unanimous decision loss to Jay Herbert back in July, 1 weight class up, so coming back down to featherweight for this one. Decent striking, good power, decent combinations. He is going to put a lot into his strikes, good pace, at least early on in the fight. He can still land when he's tired, but he does slow down quite a bit, so has that sort of unreliable cardio, which is not something that you want to see if you are considering betting on him. And stylistically, I've seen him shoot for takedowns. I just don't think he's the strongest wrestler by any means. The takedown numbers support that, just 10% accuracy. On his takedown attempts, less than 1 takedown per fight. To that point, I think most of this fight is going to occur on the feet. I think Kyle Nelson will be slightly bigger physically here. I think he can land that big shot. He has that puncher's chance, but Outside of that, I think that Doo-ho Choi should be the higher level striker here. I think he can cruise to a victory if he doesn't get too risky on the feet, because I do think that's his biggest downfall. If he doesn't try to engage in a war too much, which again could be his downfall. But even if he does, I think chances are high that he still wins. But we also have no idea what he's going to look like 3 years later. That said, based on who he was, I like Doo-ho Choi pretty comfortably in this fight.
Yeah, man. For me, I don't know, man. This is a tough fight. I'm definitely not going to bet this fight. The 3 year layoff for Doo-ho Choi is a big concern. Both guys are, to me, or both guys are chinny. Both guys, like I don't see this fight going to the decision. I see someone getting knocked out here. I don't know. I really don't know, man. Kyle Nelson. If Doo-ho Choi can't beat Kyle Nelson, I think he's done. I think he's done in the UFC. I think that's what the UFC is giving him, a guy that, on paper, he should win. But the way Doo-ho Choi fights, he's never in like, all his fights are like wars, and when in those type of fights, anyone can land in those fights. It's a game of inches. When you just go out there, stand toe to toe, and again, you have chin issues, so there's a concern. I can't feel confident, but I got to go with Doo-ho Choi, the better striker, the slicker striker. Nelson could get some takedowns, but I don't think he can do that for 3 rounds. And I just think on the feet, Choi is going to be the one likely to throw the harder shots. But again, not confident here because I don't trust the chins on both guys. But Doo-ho Choi is my pick for the channel.
Third fight of our main card, we're looking at Marcin Tybura versus Blagoy Ivanov. Tybura had that majority decision win over Alexander Romanov back in August. Good boxing, especially in close quarters. Good movement for the division. Good counterpuncher as well, especially with that jab. He's also going to use his kicks pretty effectively. He has a good steady pace about him, consistently scoring points without really exerting a large amount of energy. That, of course, is going to allow his cardio to carry on throughout the entire fight. Decent striking defense, stays pretty calm in those exchange situations. He can box in both stances. Also has that ground game, right? Almost 1.5 takedowns per fight. Great takedown defense as well at 80%, which could be important in this fight. But overall, with Marcin Tybura, good toughness, good cardio, good experience, and good win in his last fight versus a rising prospect in Alexander Romanov. Taking on Blagoy Ivanov, who beat Marcos Rogerio de Lima back in May. He's a southpaw. Expect him to jab. Expect him to use those fakes and feints. Expect him to fight from distance. Good power, good combinations. He's going to use his jab effectively, close distance, get those combinations going. And he's going to sort of include that clinch and takedown attempt style to his game. Sturdy chin, never been knocked out before, steady cardio, consistent pace. I think both of these guys have some similarities to their game, or reasons, similar reasons to like their game, I should say. I think that Blagoy Ivanov has that power advantage, which is very important. Heavyweight division, of course, one punch can change the fight. But I like Marcin Tybura pretty much everywhere else in this fight. I feel like his striking is more diverse. I feel like it's cleaner. I think his movement is better. He stays more in control. I can see a style of fight where both guys are landing, but Marcin Tybura simply lands more. And he's more effective with the striking advantages that I mentioned. Both of these guys have great takedown defense. So again, I do expect this fight to stay standing. And like I said, Tybura, I feel like, is a bit more well-versed on the feet. So Marcin Tybura is going to be my pick. He has the experience. He has the IQ. He knows how to face big punchers. He knows how to face explosive guys. And he manages to get wins in those situations. So I like Marcin Tybura to get it done.
Yeah, this is a tough fight, man. This is a real 50-50 fight. I'll go straight to it, man. I like Blagoy Ivanov here to pull off the upset here, because I think as the fight goes on, I think Blagoy, he can take a better shot. We've seen Tybura hurt. Blagoy has taken shots from the heaviest punchers, and Tybura, again, I just think he has a weaker chin, and I think that's going to be something that Blagoy can can go after here. I think that as the fight goes on, Blagoy is going to follow him around the ring. Can even hold him against the cage. He does have that sambo background, so I think he's going to be able to win those close clinch ups. And as far as striking, I think it's close, but I think Blagoy is going to land the heavier shots. So I'm going to go with Blagoy to pull off an upset here in this fight.
All right, co-main event of the evening. Let's talk about Da Un Jung versus Devin Clark. Da Un Jung lost to Dustin Jacoby, I should say, back in July. Skill-wise, I like what I see from Da Un Jung. He has patient stand-up. He has good hands. He's more of a boxer than anything else. He's going to cut the ring off pretty well. Good fakes and feints, good in and out movement, good striking diversity as well. And he has good combinations and pretty good as a counterpuncher as well. He can take the fight to the mat, almost 2.5 takedowns per fight. You note that high takedown accuracy at 61%. I wouldn't say it's an active part of his game, so don't really count on him or depend on him to do that. He likes to keep it on the feet, but it is good to know that he has it in him. What will be super relevant for this fight is his 88% takedown defense, because of course we know Devin Clark has that wrestling, grappling, clinch approach to his game. Devin Clark lost to Azamat Murzakanov back in August. And Devin Clark getting a bit better on the feet. He is a bit more patient, bit more technique. The jab isn't bad at all. The low kick is pretty sneaky as well. But for the most part, he's going to use his stand-up in a way to try to land that takedown or to try to put you in a clinch situation. Explosive shoots for takedowns, that's going to be his primary game plan. He stays pretty committed to that game plan. Almost 2.5 takedowns per fight to that point. Has that toughness, good survival instinct as well with that wrestling in case Da Un Jung hurts him. I am going to keep the prediction part of it short, though. I'm Da Un Jung pretty much all the way on this one. I don't think Devin Clark presents a problem with the striking compared to Da Un Jung here. I think that Da Un Jung was going to have a significant advantage with the striking. Devin Clark lands takedowns at 35%. Jung defends takedowns at 88%, like I mentioned earlier. So I do think that Da Un Jung is going to be able to keep the fight on the feet. And like we saw in Devin Clark's last fight, he's just not that good on the feet, right? Similar to how Devin Clark's last opponent, Azamat Murzakanov, was able to outperform Devin Clark on the feet. I can see Da Un Jung being able to outperform Devin Clark on the feet as well. I like the value on Da Un Jung here. I think even if Devin Clark is able to land a takedown in that first round, I don't think he's going to maintain it. I do think that Da Un Jung should be able to take over at least after round one, if not the entire fight. Devin Clark is tough, so of course you do have to be careful. But analytically, I like Da Un Jung in this spot. Minus 240 would be something I would consider on a parlay as well.
Yeah, I like Da Un Jung in the spot as well, man. Big guy, 6'4", big light heavyweight. Devin Clark, 6 foot, so he's gonna be the smaller guy. Even if he can get some takedowns, it's gonna be hard to keep Da Un Jung on the mat. And Da Un Jung does have good boxing. He has technical striking and power. So likely he's gonna hurt Clark. Likely he's gonna catch Clark. If Clark does get him down in that first round, again, I think Da Un Jung can get back to his feet. I think takedowns are gonna be a lot harder as the fight goes on. And I just think Da Un Jung can put on a pace, man, have him against the cage, tee off with some strikes. And he's not gonna be easy to take down with that size. So I'm gonna go Da Un Jung. Doing enough to keep it on the feet and getting him out of there.
All right, main event of the evening, we have Derrick Lewis versus Serghei Spivac. This is a main event that was supposed to happen a few months back. We did review this fight at the time. So let's, or at least from my end, I'm going to kind of refresh that conversation since nothing has happened since that. For Derrick Lewis, 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Sergey Pavlovich back in July. We know Derrick Lewis at this point. He's that big striker. He's that patient striker. He has that touch of death power, especially as a counterpuncher, right? If you overcommit, he will catch you. He controls the center of the octagon. He's going to look for that big right hand. Doesn't really have the best chin. That is something to call out about Derrick Lewis. Doesn't really have the best heart or the best will to win either. if he does get hurt, he is somebody that sort of lets himself go out. Once he's in a compromised position, he's either going to land that Hail Mary bomb or the fight's going to be over soon, right? But again, he has a lot of those come from behind victories, so Derrick Lewis is always going to be a threat. Serghei Spivac is on a 2-fight win streak. Both of those wins were via ground and pound. He beat Augusto Sakai back in August. Combat Sambo fighter. The striking is looking cleaner. Fight over fight. Has a solid jab. Has solid striking speed as well. Has good timing with his striking. He's going to use that solid timing to find those takedown opportunities as well. And in terms of that wrestling, chain wrestling, right? He's going to, hold that clinch against the cage, kind of chain those wrestling attempts or takedown attempts together, I should say. When he gets you down, and we see he has very solid numbers, over 4 takedowns per fight, well over 60% as well. He has good top position to go along with it. And he has no problem. I mean, we see his weight there, 254 pounds. He has no problem keeping guys down who are 10, 20, 30 pounds heavier than he is come fight night. Serghei Spivac has that sort of smothering wrestling style with his opponents, especially lately. He's been aggressive. He's gone straight to that takedown approach. He, again, has incorporated the chain wrestling. And again, his striking is starting to stand out as well. So this is a heavyweight who isn't still improving fight over fight and who could really be a contender maybe by the end of the year. I can see Spivac implementing the same exact game plan that he did in his last fight versus Augusto Sakai. He was trying to come forward. His offense with the striking was consistent with his pace. He was going straight for the takedowns, most importantly, and he was landing those takedowns, right? The ground and pound was pretty relentless. As Sakai makes his way back up, Spivac was chaining the takedown attempts together, controlling the back, doing those different kinds of things to drain that cardio tank. The equalizer, of course, is Derrick Lewis's power. I mentioned Lewis, I mentioned Lewis always having that touch of death power, so he's always going to be that threat. Now, from a betting perspective, and I say it for every Derrick Lewis fight, I can't really rely on that touch of death Hail Mary being your only weapon. It is a legitimate weapon, but otherwise, I see Spivac as pretty much better everywhere, pretty much more effective everywhere. I think he's improving while Derrick Lewis is on the decline. I think Spivac is going to go to that wrestling right away. I think he's going to avoid the early threat. I think he's going to try to wear on Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis has just 55% takedown defense. So I feel pretty comfortable picking Serghei Spivac here. I think he avoids that power. Derrick Lewis can always land a Hail Mary, but at minus 230, Serghei Spivac, in my eyes, is good value odds for that Hail Mary not happening. So I'm looking at Serghei Spivac to get it done. I feel pretty good about this one outside of a Hail Mary touch of death bomb by Derrick Lewis.
Yeah, that's pretty much the fight, right? Like Serghei Spivac's going to be able to take him down. Lewis has been taken down by many fighters. If fighters go for takedowns, they usually get them. 50% takedown defense tells you that Serghei is not going to have a problem. And Serghei has multiple takedowns that he goes to. So if one's not working, he has a couple more tricks to get Derrick Lewis on that. So I won't see Spivac having an issue at all getting him down. But again, that power. But Spivac is improving in the striking area. The years go by, he's definitely taken that part of his game seriously. He's more defensive now, more defensively sound now. So I think he's gonna be aware. He's a long fighter as well, so he's not gonna be the shorter guy. Both 6'3". I expect Spivac to be a little taller. I think he does enough to stay out of danger, gets it to the mat. But again, at any point, any split second, Lewis can land. But I have to go with the guy that I think is going to be winning the majority of the fight, right? So I got to go with Serghei Spivac in this spot. But that knockout threat obviously scares me. But his grappling is horrible, man. And I can see Spivac even getting a finish on the mat. So I'm going to go Serghei Spivac here to get the win here.
All right, so let's take it to Vegas. Let's consider some underdogs, and then let's take a look at some favorites. I will read off the underdogs. Jesus Aguilar is an underdog against Tatsuro Taira. Mandy Böhm is the underdog. Denis Tiuliulin. Seung Choi Toshiomi, Kazama, Zha Yi. We have Jeka Saragih as an even money underdog. Adam Fugitt as an underdog. Kyle Nelson, Blagoy Ivanov, Devin Clark, and Derrick Lewis.
All right, so I'm gonna go with one sec. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Saragih.
All right.
And also add another one. One second, let me get you that one. Saragih. I'm also gonna go with Blagoy Ivanov.
All right, so two underdogs provided for this card. My underdog pick will be. I'm gonna look at Denis Tiuliulin, plus 160 as an underdog there. And in terms of sort of favorite picks or parlay picks, who are you considering?
All right, I'm looking at Rinya Nakamura. I'm looking at Daong Jung. I'm looking at Serghei Spivac, actually, and Yusaku Kinoshita.
All right, so 4 fights: Rinya Nakamura, Serghei Spivac, Yusaku Kinoshita, and Daun Jung. Those 4 fights at a plus 206, $100 will return a profit of $206, and for our bigger bettors, $250 will return a profit of $515. My parlay is actually quite similar to what you pulled up. The only difference is that I'm looking at 3 fights instead of 4, and all 3 fights are already listed. So I'm going to exclude Yusaku Kinoshita. Otherwise, I am looking at Rinya Nakamura. I am looking at Daun Jung. I am looking at Serghei Spivac as well. Those 3 fights would be a plus 136, meaning $100 will return a profit of $136. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return a profit of $339. So let's sign off on that note. This has been UFC Fight Night, Derrick Lewis versus Serghei Spivac, full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. As usual, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we want to hear from you in the comments. How do you feel about our picks? What picks are you considering? What picks do you have additional questions about? We're more than happy to have those conversations in the comments, so make sure you participate in the comments. Otherwise, again, UFC prediction and analysis video, UFC prediction and analysis video, I should say, by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan. I go by Harris. This has been UFC Fight Night, Derrick Lewis versus Serghei Spivac, full card prediction video. In our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.